In fact, he now resides in Southern California and conducts the San Diego Symphony. That's where I'm from. I'll have to go meet with him, Greg said. Cone continued. When asked what inspired him to continue his pursuit toward his purpose, his response was the knowing. He said there's a big difference between believing in something and knowing it. For example, what would be more powerful? Believing you may find true love one day, or knowing that someone is waiting for you and all you need to do is move toward that person until you meet? Greg wrote in his notebook, the knowing. There is a big difference between believing in something and knowing it. I agree, Julie Crone said. That is exactly what kept me going when no owners or breeders would put me on their horses. But I never thought of it that way. I guess I always knew I would be one of the best in my business, and I figured paying my dues was just part of the process. So I didn't let it stand in my way or defeat me. I just knew what I was destined for. Precisely, Cone said. And that's what kept our business going as well. I mean, it got really tough, trust me. I estimated one time that I was spending 60% of my day handling collection calls from creditors. At one low point, our accountant insisted we meet with bankruptcy attorneys. When we left the meeting, we laughed out loud. They wanted $30,000 to file for us. We thought if we had $30,000, we would not need to file for bankruptcy in the first place. What did you do? Greg inquired. We kept pushing on, knowing that our break was just around the corner. We didn't want to give up at a low point. There it is again, Greg thought to himself, recognizing an echo from Ron Glosser's counsel. Don't make major decisions in a valley. Then, finally, we found our new project, and just 2 years ago, we published Rhonda Byrne's book, The Secret. It sold 6 million copies in the first 12 months. We got out of debt, and its success has made us all millionaires. What a great story, Julie Crone said. It sounds like you had 3 parts of the equation working for you, Greg said. Your passion for books, your talent for publishing, and your action. Yet you needed the right association to put you over the top. Yes, and it only took 22 years for us to become an overnight success, Cone said with a laugh. As the plane landed, the 3 exchanged contact information and hugged each other goodbye. Greg closed his eyes for a moment to reflect on what was happening to him. He finally felt a sense of purpose, as if he might just be onto something that would define his own success formula. One thing that continued to echo in his mind was the concept of faith, the importance of faith. What had Lauren Nelson called it? Focused faith. He remembered how Mia had volunteered that she would pray for him and for David. Even David, in his fog, seemed to have an inkling that the power to cure his problem lay within him if he took the action to change himself. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show it. Napoleon Hill. Chapter 8. Stop Planning. A car awaited him outside the main terminal. Greg had to smile. The car was painted to look like a cow and had a distinctive sign that read, "Eat more chicken." As it pulled away from the curb, with Greg inside, tourists took pictures of the colorfully painted vehicle and pointed at the words of the sign. Greg realized that he was about to meet a true legend, someone he had read about for years and always admired. Pulling up to the gate of the large corporate campus, he experienced a childlike excitement. It reminded him of the thrill he had felt when his father took him to his first baseball game. The sign there read, "Welcome to Chick-fil-A," and what a welcoming sight it was. Animals roamed the 70-acre compound. Many of the giant trees around the lake were blooming, and people strolled about the grounds. Greg still couldn't believe that Buckland had set up a meeting for him with the one and only Truett Cathy, a great humanitarian and self-made billionaire in the fast food market. He was credited with inventing the chicken sandwich. I suppose that's why Mr. Buckland wanted me to bring him back one, Greg thought. Even though he wasn't much of a reader, Greg had actually read some of Truett Cathy's books. There it was again, Buckland's dictum about the books you read and the people you meet. He had also heard that Cathy had stopped giving interviews to anyone. How had Buckland arranged this? And more importantly, why was Kathy willing to grant the request to meet with him? Exiting the colorful car, the visitor was shown to the security station. His picture was taken, and a special VIP guest pass created for him. A friendly guide led him to the elevator. When they reached the top floor, Greg was greeted by another cheerful assistant. "Mr. Kathy is expecting you. Please follow me." Greg couldn't help but notice the enormous glass ceiling, stretching the entire length of the 5-story structure. He was almost giddy with anticipation. The guide led him to the office of the 87-year-old business legend. "Hello there, young man," Mr. Kathy said. "Come on in and sit down." As Greg took a chair, he reviewed his surroundings. The office walls were decorated with memorabilia and family photos, but what stood out was the poster of a mountain climber reaching the summit. His attention was also drawn to the Horatio Alger Award on the desk, a revered tribute in the business world. Members of the Horatio Alger Association of Distinguished Americans are a select group of individuals with a wide spectrum of life experiences. Similar to characters in stories by Horatio Alger Jr., association members traditionally have started life in humble or economically challenging circumstances. Despite this early adversity, many would say because of it, they have worked with great diligence to achieve success and fulfill their dreams. "So, tell me, how may I serve you?" Kathy asked, drawing Greg out of his reverie. There it was again, an explicit offer to be of service by another successful businessman. It seemed to him that all the people he was meeting possessed the desire to reach out and help others. "I'm honored to have this opportunity to learn from you." Jumping right in his usual blunt style, Greg asked, "What's the secret to your success?" Kathy's head tilted to the side as he smiled at the abruptness of the question. "I stopped planning so much," was his answer. "What?" Greg flirted. "Stop planning so much," Kathy repeated. "That goes against everything I've ever heard or was taught," Greg said. "I'm sure it does, but you asked what worked for me and I told you," Kathy said. "It's like this, young man. Whatever you do, you have to have a goal or a destination in mind. But once you set your sights on where you're going, just move toward that direction. Have faith that you will get there, and the how will work itself out." "With all due respect, Mr. Kathy, I hear what you're saying, but it's hard for me to believe." Truett Kathy leaned toward his young visitor. "You seem like a pretty sharp fellow. And last year, I bet you had a lot of plans." Greg agreed with a nod. "How many of those plans worked out for you?" Greg's face went blank as he reflected over his past 365 days. In truth, nothing had gone as he had planned. In fact, he had been on a downward slide during that time, financially speaking. "Now, please understand that you may achieve some end result from time to time, meaning you may hit a goal, but the way you intended to reach it probably differed from the reality." Quickly, Greg realized that this conversation had to go into the notepad. Stop over-planning. Kathy went on. "Let me give you an example. Say you have a goal of getting to the end of your street. That's the start because you've set yourself a goal. Then what you need to do is leave the house and start moving in that direction. It's as simple as that. Now, if you stick to a specific plan, take 2 steps, pause, take 2 steps, pause, and so on, you may actually miss all the unexpected opportunities around you." "Opportunities?" Greg said. "Absolutely. You see, while the people who plan their path are focusing on their steps and the breaths they take, a guy like me is looking to see if a kid left his bicycle or skateboard out to make my journey shorter. I didn't plan for that. I just kept my eyes open for them." Greg smiled at the image of this 87-year-old on a skateboard. "I totally get that. You have a destination in mind, move toward it, then seek opportunities to assist you along the way." "Exactly. And if you are really lucky, a neighbor may drive by and let you hitch a ride, and you could be there in no time." Greg sat in silence for a moment before jumping back in with another question. Are you saying you never planned on your success? I didn't plan for Chick-fil-A to happen. It just did. Sure, I had the end in mind, but I had no idea how it was going to happen. When I got out of the Army, I opened the Dwarf Grill in 1946. I called it the Dwarf Grill because it only had 10 stools and 4 tables. It was 20 years later, in the 1960s, that I developed the pressure-cooked chicken sandwich and opened the first Chick-fil-A restaurant in Atlanta. Like I said, I just kept pushing toward the vision with faith in the process, and the how opened itself up to me. Kathy then said, "Want to take a tour?" "I would love it." Greg rose from his chair and followed his host into the hallway. "I saw that picture of a mountain climber in your office. Were you a thrill seeker back in the day?" Sort of. But the picture is more a reminder and a symbol of what we have created here," Kathy replied. "The climber represents my business life, not being afraid to conquer any challenge, no matter how high, no matter how steep. It also reminds me to dream big and never stop short of reaching the top. It also represents the way I do things." Greg scribbled, "Dream big and never stop short of reaching the top." Then he asked, "Do what exactly?" "As you may know, a mountaineer will take great risks to get to the next level toward his goal. That's me. Yet he has to be careful not to risk his life by not having a lifeline and other support." "Lifeline?" "Yes. Every 20 feet or so the climber ascends, he ties himself off to the mountain so that if he slips or makes a careless move, he will not plummet to the bottom. He just falls a few feet from where he last secured himself." "That makes sense," Greg said. "Looking back, I sure wish I had done that in my own life. It seems I'm an all-or-nothing sort of guy." In the notebook, he wrote, "Climb safe, but climb to the top." Kathy watched him write. "It's okay to take huge leaps in life. In fact, to get ahead, you have to. It's also okay not to bet the farm on every decision you make. Give yourself a little breathing room." He pointed to the entrance of the building. "Down here is my car collection." Greg's eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store. He pinched himself because he was still in awe that Truett Cathy was showing him around his collection of antique automobiles. Each one was from a year that represented a milestone in his life. Cathy explained the significance of each vehicle, offering details about the cars themselves. He was passionate about each one. The one car that did not represent a significant year was the Batmobile, the car from the movie Batman Returns. It was purchased at an auction simply because Mr. Cathy liked the idea of owning a bit of Hollywood history. It was yet another example of attraction versus commitment. The Batmobile was a toy, while the others had true meaning to his life. The two continued their stroll, making their way into the company lunchroom. "You hungry?" Cathy asked. He indicated the food gallery ahead. It was the best buffet Greg had ever laid eyes on, everything from pizza and pasta to sandwiches and lemonade. "Help yourself," the entrepreneur offered. "I see you have everything one could want," Greg said. "But I don't see a cash register." Raising his hand to shield his mouth, Truett Cathy whispered in the visitor's ear, "It's the only thing we left out." Cathy's smile grew. "My company is focused on its people more than its profit. We keep the restaurant closed on Sundays. We have our own innovative approach to training our store managers, and we offer college scholarships to our employees. We believe if we support our people, they will make the business successful. And they have." Greg wrote, "Focus on your people more than your profits." As he jotted down the message, Greg remembered his mentor's request. "Mr. Buckland asked me to bring him home a sandwich. I suppose I should try one for myself since I'm here. I love your strips, but I've never tried the sandwich." "Let's do something about that then." Mr. Cathy headed toward the kitchen. "This is the best, right when they're hot." He grabbed a fresh buttered bun and put his famous chicken strips on it. "You've got to have the pickles. It's what makes it so good." Truitt handed the completed masterpiece to his visitor, who immediately sampled it. His host was right.